The Prime Minister was the guest of honor at the Bastille Day Parade in Paris today, which saw 3 Rafale fighter jets and 2 C-17 Globemasters of the Indian Air Force participate in the fly-past. In fact, a 269-member contingent of the Indian Armed Forces marched alongside their French counterparts during the Bastille Day celebrations that mark the French National Day. Bastille Day holds a special significance this year as India and France are marking 25 years of their strategic partnership. Prime Minister Modi said this was a reflection of the unbreakable friendship between India and France. On Thursday, French President Emmanuel Macron hosted a private dinner for Prime Minister Modi at Elysee Palace and conferred on him the Grand Cross of the Legion of Honor, the highest French honor in military or civilian orders. This makes Prime Minister Modi the first Indian Prime Minister to receive the award. Earlier in the day, the Prime Minister addressed the Indian diaspora in Paris and made some important announcements. India's most successful payment system, Unified Payment System or UPI, will now be used in France, starting with the Eiffel Tower. That means Indian tourists will now be able to pay in rupees. Also, Indian students pursuing their masters in France will now be eligible for a 5-year work visa as opposed to the current 2-year visa. India will open a new consulate in Marseille. Interestingly, while talking about the people-to-people connect between India and France, Prime Minister Modi said star French footballer Kylian Mbappe has more fans in India than in France. After the Bastille Day celebrations today, Prime Minister Modi met with the President of the French National Assembly. The business end of the Prime Minister's visit kicks off later today. The Prime Minister will have a ceremonial reception at the Elysee Palace. This will be followed by delegation-level talks between the Prime Minister and French President Emmanuel Macron. The two leaders will also participate in the India-France CEO Forum, and later in the evening, Macron will host a state banquet for Prime Minister Modi at the iconic Louvre Museum complex in Paris. The banquet will be attended by 250 dignitaries. The two leaders will witness the fireworks display over Eiffel Tower from the terrace at the Louvre. As for the concrete outcomes that are expected from this visit, defense ties between the two countries are likely to take center stage. Some big-ticket defense deals are likely to be inked. Most importantly, India's procurement of 26 Rafale marine fighter jets and 3 Scorpion submarines for the Indian Navy worth 90,000 crore. A deal to jointly develop an aircraft engine in India with transfer of technology is also expected to be signed. Prime Minister Modi and President Macron are likely to discuss cooperation in areas of civil nuclear technology, counterterrorism, cybersecurity, space research, trade and investment, and climate change. A big part of the discussions will hinge on co-production and co-development of military hardware, with a focus on India's goal of self-reliance that has emerged as the leitmotif of its defense and foreign policy in recent times. Something that was quite evident even during Prime Minister Modi's recent state visit to the US. So what are the key takeaways likely to be, and how significant is this visit in further cementing India-France ties? Let's now understand the significance of this visit and what we can expect with our panel of experts. Joining me on the show tonight, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, former diplomat, Vice Admiral Ajendra Bahadur Singh, former naval officer, and Captain TK Sharma, former spokesperson for the Indian Navy. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Let me start with Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. Sir, the Prime Minister, of course, was the guest of honor at the Bastille Day Parade, which this year marks 25 years of the strategic partnership between India and France. The Prime Minister says this is a reflection of the unbreakable friendship between India and France. He's referred to it as a long-standing and time-tested partnership. Apart from the fact that there are some big-ticket defense deals that are in the works, and we will discuss that in great detail, but for you, looking at the big picture, how significant is this visit? And how important a role do you think it could play in further cementing ties between India and France?
Well, Neha, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. Let me straight away mention that this visit is highly significant, and it signifies the great importance now being attached to India on the global stage, and the extremely high stature which our Prime Minister has achieved in the international arena. It's a great honor that he has been invited as the chief guest for the Bastille Day Parade. It's also a great honor that the Legion of Honor has been, the cross of the Legion of Honor has been conferred on him. But look at the background in which this visit is taking place. In the month of May, Prime Minister was invited as a guest to the G7 summit in Tokyo, in Japan. After that, he was invited as a state guest to Australia, where he received a rousing welcome and where he took the relationship to greater heights. Then last month, that is in June, he was invited as a state guest to the United States. There again, he received a rousing welcome and he signed some extremely important agreements. And now he is in France, where he is a state guest, he is the chief guest at the Bastille Day Parade, and is being hailed as an international leader of the highest stature. So it is a matter of pride for India that its prime minister is being treated in such a grand manner, and that India has been recognized as a country of such importance. Secondly, as you mentioned, the high point of the visit is going to be the aspect of defense cooperation. You have defense experts here on the panel, but let me mention that even for a layman, to have Indian soldiers, an Indian contingent comprising of all the three wings of the military services, marching alongside the French soldiers, to have Indian Rafales doing the fly past, all this is not just symbolic. It signifies the importance that the French are attaching to defense cooperation. Hello, is there some background noise?
We can hear you, sir.
No.
Please go ahead.
All right. Now, this aspect of defense cooperation is most visible during this visit, and the deals which are being signed are of great significance for India and, of course, for France, because we need high quality defense equipment. Look, our geostrategic environment is the most dangerous. You have Pakistan on one side, you have China on the northern borders. Both have very hostile intentions. Pakistan occupies 78,000 square kilometers of Indian territory. China occupies 38,000 square kilometers of Indian territory. And yet, they are coveting more. Their intentions continue to be extremely aggressive. We are taking them on. But you know, there is a dimension of a threat from the seas which cannot be ignored. And this is why the Navy has been asking for better quality planes and better quality equipment, including more submarines. So it is very significant that a deal is going to be signed for France to supply India with 36 Rafale M's, which are the version of the Rafale which are with us, but for the use on the maritime area. They can land on aircraft.
Right.
Of course, our defense officers will amplify more of that. The Scorpions, you know, we already have 6 Scorpions which were manufactured jointly by France and India at the Mazatlan House, but we are going to get more. So this aspect of defense cooperation is extremely important. But then there are some other points which I would like to just briefly touch upon. As you mentioned, this is the 25th anniversary of the India-France strategic partnership, and the meetings that will be taking place will be directed at seeing how to take the relationship forward. there are many decisions which are going to be taken, which pertain to various areas, like, for instance, the environment, climate change, nuclear energy, education, healthcare. There is a whole range of activities. But in this, the aspect of economic cooperation will be very, very important. France and India already have a thriving economic partnership. Bilateral trade between the two countries is around $11 billion. And there are 1,000 French companies which are operating in India, and they have a turnover of around $20 billion. 210 Indian companies are operating in France, and they have a huge investment in that country. So the economic relationship is already very important. But the fact that the meeting of the Indo-French Business Cooperation Council will be taking place to coincide with the Prime Minister's visit underlines the fact that the two sides attach a great deal of importance on how to take the economic relationship forward. Then, of
Absolutely.
course, as you are mentioned, there are some decisions which have been taken. For instance, opening a new Indian consulate in Marseille, the decision to allow UPI payments, the 5-year-long visa for post-studies for master's students. All these are directed at the welfare of the common person. So it is not only in matters of defense and economic cooperation, but for the welfare of the common man that
Absolutely.
these
The,
are
the,
very significant.
no
At the
doubt
moment,
about
this is
that.
what I have.
Yes. And the talks that are going to take place tonight, like you said, sir, are going to touch upon many areas of cooperation. But yes, defense ties seem to be topping the agenda. Let me go across to Vice Admiral Ajendra Bahadur Singh at this point. Sir, you know, the much talked about Rafale deal and Scorpion submarine deal. Now, it is priced at around 90,000 crore. 26 Rafale marine fighter jets, 3 Scorpion submarines for the Indian Navy, and a deal to jointly develop an aircraft engine in India with transfer of technology. All of this is expected to happen when the two leaders meet. How significant do you think this is for the Indian Navy? And how important is this to take the India-France partnership to the next level? I think we also have to remember here that transfer of technology now seems to be a very important component of India's defense strategy and foreign policy as well.
Thank you, Neha. Let me at the outset say I fully agree with the ambassador. Second is it's a historic occasion. And any historic occasion must bring with it steps in which both sides move together forward and thereafter cooperate in the best manner that is possible. There's a wide range of activity which is happening on the other fronts, such as the cybersecurity, cooperation, extension of visas, and things like that. But I'm going to focus on the defense part of it. And I think this is most significant in this 25th year of Indo-French military partnership. Now, first and foremost, let's come to the Rafales. As you brought out, what I want to bring out here is, traditionally, such high-value deals are to be done between governments. And therefore, I fully endorse this government-to-government deal, which is going to happen. The things will hopefully get worked out after the decision by the two sides, levels. But I must also tell you that the Indian Navy has got 2 aircraft carriers. We have had an operational gap because we did not have adequate number of fighters to fly from our aircraft carriers. And Rafale, the naval variant of it, is going to fulfill that a big void which has existed. Now, I want to say that first and foremost, it meets all the NSQRs, the naval staff qualitative requirements, whether it is from air, sea, or ground attack version. All the parameters, we did check them out when I was the CNC in Western Naval Command, were checked out at the shore-based test facility in Goa. And this is a twin-engine aircraft, ideally suited for our STOBA carriers, and I think the government-to-government transaction is the most appropriate in this case. I would also bring out that the Indian Navy will benefit from the IF experience in this case, because Air Force has already got these, and we are going to use their test facilities. We are going to use the same missiles with the Air Force is using. So there will be a commonality of support infrastructure, the MROs, and things to that effect. It is also an aircraft which is going to be future ready. Now, when I say it's future ready, it's going to be able to integrate the Rudram as and when it gets online, the NASAM MR, which is a naval version, and a whole lot of other PGMs and other weapons that are being developed by the Indian DRDO and other agencies. Most significantly, I think it will fill a big void, especially because it is air-to-air refueling capable. It carries with it the Exocet missile, the Scalp missile, which are a class of their own. And this will be inducted in a phased manner. All the issues have been taken care of in the staff process, and a large number of deliberations have happened. And I hope that the leadership on both sides comes together to make this huge step forward. In my opinion, it's a huge step forward to do this entire thing.
Certainly.
Moving on.
Go ahead,
moving
sir,
on to
complete your
the
point.
Moving on to the Scorpion submarines. The Indian Navy has inducted 5 Scorpion submarines already. The 6th one is under construction at the Mazagon Docks Limited. Now, we have to remember that we lost our expertise at construction of conventional submarines when we stopped the earlier German line. So I think this is the most appropriate decision, given the fact that the 75 India and the 76 program are still not on the horizon. We are still under discussion zone. This is going to be filling the void because our submarines are getting old, and because this will be an upgraded version of the submarine, I'm not fully aware as to what are the contours of this decision making, but I am certain that the AIP, the Air Independent Propulsion, and the Scalp missile will form a part of the deal. And this will bring in huge capability, arrest the decline in the numbers of submarines that we have today, and of course, keep the P-75 line open, by which I think the expertise will be retained in the country. It's a great decision, in my opinion, to be taken forward, and we hope that all things will fall into place as and when the discussions are held at the staff level to make sure that we get good products in a time-bound manner, state-of-the-art technology at the government-to-government discussion. And I think that's the way forward.
That certainly is the way forward, and it does look like that decision has been made and these deals are certainly going to be inked. Captain TK Sharma, let me come to you now. You would agree that French combat jets have been the mainstay of India's defense ecosystem for decades now. Even in the 80s, we bought the Mirage fighter planes from France, and then of course 2015 onwards we've had Rafale deals with France. Now, as the Vice Admiral says, that the Indian Navy has been dealing with severe shortages for many years now. He says that these deals are going to fill the void that's existed for a very long time. How significant do you think the deals for the Rafale M fighter jets and the Scorpion submarines are, and especially given the fact that China seems to be rapidly expanding in the Indian Ocean waters, do you believe that the significance of these submarines for the Indian Navy is that much more?
Okay, good evening, Neha, and good evening, sir, Admiral sir, and also the ambassador. Well, very, very precisely and comprehensively, I'll try and bring in the importance. You see, we went in for the first IAC, that is INS Vikrant. The keel laying was done in 2009, and eventually in 13 years, last year we commissioned INS Vikrant at the hands of the Honorable Prime Minister in October. Now the moot point over here is, where is the fighter element? We have been looking for it, and we are all in India aware of two OEMs who were fighting for it. That is the Boeing and the Dassault Aviation. Tremendous amount of deliberations went into it, trials, this, that, and as he's saying that they came to Goa with their aircraft, and all the trials and whatever the Indian Navy was looking for was done over there. And after a lot of all these things which have happened, aircraft which has been now selected finally is the Rafale Marine. And I have been made to understand that this is much better than, and it met all our requirements. Keeping that aside, Neha, now the point is that the fighter jet, the carrier-based fighter jet, is the main arm of an aircraft carrier and also of a fleet. So this was affecting the capability of Indian Navy because of the serviceability rate of the MiG-29Ks. And you know it that in 2016, we had decommissioned Virat, which had the element of Sea Harriers on top. So there was a very, very pressing need to fill that gap, which the Admiral said that, a fighter, without a fighter, the aircraft carrier is nothing. And now, since that has been addressed, and this aircraft has been flying from Charles de Gaulle, and it's a proven aircraft, and we have done and we have seen everything. So insofar as doing Rafale Marine for Indian Navy is concerned, I think this is a huge step, and it's going to pay us great dividends in the times to come. Secondly, the Scorpions. Indian Navy had a plan, and a CCS approval was given to Indian Navy to make 24 submarines in 30 years, and that is as far back as 1999. We had two types of submarines before this, that is the Foxtrot class, which came between 1968 and 73, which were paid off eventually by 2010. And the second line of submarines which we got was EKMs, which came from Russia from 1986 onwards, and we inducted the last one in 1999-2000. Both these class of boats have done a tremendous service for Indian Navy, and now what we are looking at is paying off the EKMs also. And as the Admiral brought out, we have only 5 new submarines, the Calvary class, which has been made by MDL with the participation with Naval Group France. So now we have an inventory of old boats and new boats, but these old boats are all 30 years plus. So, and the new project in which the 75 India has to be made is somewhere on the horizon, but we don't know where, when. So now comes the point of plugging the gap. Old boats are going away, new boats are less in number, and this line of Scorpions, which has given us 6 boats, the 6th one is undergoing trials, so it will be available to us maybe early next year. So that line of production will be kept alive by this deal, and it is a huge boost for Indian Navy, the submarine arm, that at least we will have the boats. And of course, these 3 boats, what I know is that they will be better than the previous ones, maybe more stealth, TLAM capability, and of course the AIP plug, which Admiral is telling you. So addressing these 2 things, and this is going to make the Indian Navy very, very competent and a very, very potent force insofar as IOR region is concerned. And if you have a look at the last 10 years, what all we have got, it's state of the art. It is state of the art. P8Is, the Apaches, the Chinooks, the Romeos, the Predators, the Rafales, the Rafale Marines, the Scorpions, you name it. Indian Navy has got, or the Indian Armed Forces have got whatever they wanted. So I think this is one of those landmark deals, which of course the last visit in US got us the Predators, and this visit to France is getting us and plugging a lot of gaps in our capabilities, which will be very, very good.
plugging a lot of gaps in our capabilities and a much needed acquisition for the Indian Army that has been, Indian Navy, I beg your pardon, which has been dealing with many shortages for a long time now. All right, let's now go across to our next guest. I'm now joined by former Foreign Secretary of India, Ambassador Shashank. Sir, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome back to Global Lens. Let me begin by asking you, sir, how significant do you think is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to France? He was the guest of honor, as we know, at the Bastille Day Parade. We are marking 25 years of the strategic partnership. The Prime Minister has described it as a long-standing and time-tested one. How significant is this visit according to you?
I would say it's an extremely important visit, a timely recognition from both sides. From the French side that India is a desirable friend, and even if there are opinions in Europe critical of India or Prime Minister Modi, France has to take a decisive action at the leadership level that they must emphasize the great partnership and great potential of our relationship between India and France. You know that when India became independent, France was one of the first countries which handed over all their colonial possessions in India to the Indian Prime Minister and suggested that India should now become really an important country in the developing world. The same way what they had done to the United States when they had handed over Louisiana and some other French possessions there. So I think that is starting from that. And then they have been with us on the space program. They have been with us on the defense technology, on the other technology spheres. And finally, at the time of 1998 Pokhran tests, when others were either imposing sanctions on us or threatening sanctions, France was the one which came ahead with us and said that, all right, we are with you, and we set up the first strategic partnership with France. So that has to be recognized very strongly by people in India.
Sir. France has stood by India in ways that very few countries have. The French President Emmanuel Macron is speaking there at Elysee Palace as he welcomes Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Of course, there will be delegation-level talks between the two sides a short while from now before the state banquet. Let me go back to our guest, Ambassador Shashank, former Foreign Secretary of India, who's with us on the show. So my apologies for interrupting you there. We had to cut across to the French President, who is welcoming Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Sir, if you could just complete your thought. You were earlier saying how France stood by India at a time when few other countries did. For example, in the aftermath of the 1998 nuclear test, when others rushed to impose sanctions on us, France was one country that actually opposed those sanctions. Not only that, the US may want to take the high moral ground today and make a big deal of sharing technology with us. Finally, in 2023, France is something that has done that for years and decades, and that to 100% transfer of technology.
I agree with you. Only thing is that USA is a superpower and they have their global interests. France cannot disregard that. We also cannot disregard that. And therefore, we are grateful to France that even in changing the American position with regard to our nuclear program, the French president played a good role and a very positive role for India. So I think this is an important thing, that at that time, the European countries had helped us and they were able to change the mind at the policy-making level in the United States. But I must, of course, congratulate the American leadership and the Indian leadership of that time, that they were able to move forward very focused manner for a strategic partnership. First, they took the next steps, then they took strategic partnership, and then the Americans went to the extent of persuading China to make an exception for India in giving the nuclear technology to India and whatever we wanted at that time, to make an exception. Now, of course, there are many other international groupings on which we have to work hard along with France, USA, other countries, including China and Russia, that we become members of all these groupings as a nuclear power. So I think that stage, that is continuing. At the same time, France is offering us all kinds of defense technologies and is willing to produce, even for the fifth generation, a co-production of a new technology where Safran, which is the French aircraft engine manufacturing company, is willing to work with DRDO and HAL to develop this in India. So that will be really a great day when we can develop this engine directly. In the meantime, of course, the Americans have agreed to give us the GE engine and have it made in India, which will be useful for our Tejas. So I think, therefore, we cannot put one against the other, but I think both of them are moving together, and the leaderships in both countries are taking decisive steps despite the feelings of some people or media or NGOs in both countries to say that India is moving away from democracy or India is moving away from human rights, etc., etc. So, but then they have taken a decision on the basis of the national security of their countries,
Well,
national security of India, of the world, of Asia. And I think that is the most important thing.